Your book Room came out in 2010 and garnered an awful lot of acclaim. But at that time, did you always have ambitions to turn it into a film?
I did. In fact, as soon as I'd sold the novel, there's always about a year where you're waiting for a book to come out. And usually I just get on with writing the next novel. But in this case, I went ahead and wrote the film script for Room because I was convinced that it should be a film and that I should be the writer. And I knew that Hollywood might not agree because there's a traditional distrust of the novelist who adapts her work for a film. So I thought I'd have a bash at it myself before anyone could tell me not to.
It was a very screenplay-like screenplay. And I just really liked her so much. And we just had this connection, and our conversations about what you might do with it suggested that we were both very similarly motivated around how to change this from a book into a film. And it just felt like we should do it. And I think in a way I brought a certain amount of that of that experience about how films work. And Emma was absolutely never defensive about the book. She was so open to that conversation, and she was so responsive to suggestions, to different ways of structuring things. So it ended up being this fabulous, very open collaboration, and it never felt like she was defending the book and I was trying to grab it away from her to change it into a film. It always felt like we were both trying to make the best film we could.
He's worked with writers a lot. He's really comfortable with writers and he takes them seriously. He doesn't see them as just, content producers. He's a real writer's director, you know, and he's very literary himself. In fact, we used to joke that he typically had something more highbrow in his bag than I did. So he was very open to that, and when he read my script, he said, oh yeah, we have basically the same ideas about this. Neither of us is trying to transform the shape of it, but we can see that in every scene you need to use the camera, you need to use light to tell the story rather than just words.
When I first read the novel, I remember I was surprised by the escape twist halfway through the book, which obviously turns it into a very different book and by extension a very different film. Did that present a sort of a tonal problem for you, that sudden shift?
Well, it was the other big challenge aside from creating that experience of Room from Jake's point of view. The other big challenge was structure. But it's a great one because it's really two halves, and with this kind of mini thriller in the middle.
You're gonna help me trick old Nick. This is our chance.
That escape sequence would normally be the climax of a film, the end of a film. But we always said, well, it's an escape story, but the physical escape is not the final escape. The final escape happens at the end.
It's the sort of physical escape versus the emotional
escape,
isn't it?
For me, it was how do you turn the kind of anticlimax of their arrival back in the world and it not being the kind of fabulous explosion of joy and happiness that Ma has fantasized about for all these years. How do you turn that into something which begins to compel an audience to continue watching? And I think it's probably the thing that I'm most pleased about in how the film came out, that the tension in the second half is no less than in the first. It's just of a different order, a different kind. And that movement through the escape and the hospital back out into the world, you're already on the journey of the second half before you realize it. So I don't think as an audience people sit there going, wait a second, where am I now?
If what you're telling is a kidnapping story, then you're assuming that being kidnapped is a bad thing, but the outside world is great. And I think that's really simplistic and facile. And I liked the idea that I would look at different forms of freedom. I mean, yes, obviously it's a bad thing to be locked up, but that, as Ma says at one point, people are locked up in all sorts of ways. So I thought it would be really interesting to explore those two worlds and to compare them and to look at the many ways in which a small child might prefer the cocoon. I mean, we all start out literally wrapped up tight inside, and as we get born and move through life, we want a bigger world. And at every point we accept more freedom and also more risk.
The second half of the film does illustrate how resilient and adaptable children are. I mean, more so than adults in many ways. I mean, it's fascinating from that point of view. I think a doctor at one point refers to him as plastic. He's still plastic at some point or another. But the performance from Jake Tremblay is just wonderful.
It's gloriously plastic, isn't it? He's so
plastic.
Varied. He's so in the moment. He was a joy to work with because you know, I realised it would have felt ethically dubious to be putting a child through such long hours, you know, for 49 days if they weren't really enjoying it or if they were remotely troubled. Now, he was not troubled by the storyline. He only needed to know the basics about a bad guy has us locked up. He understood the story because it was filmed in sequence, which is really unusual for a film. Very rare, and it's more expensive and troublesome, but it worked so well for all the actors and for all of us. He didn't ever object to doing more takes. He enjoys this stuff, you know. So he'd go off and have his break and play with his toys, and then Lenny would say, "Come on, next take."
Well,
and
huge
child would
kind of
run
like
back.
playground for him, I should imagine.
Exactly, yeah. And I think he felt so safe with Bree. They were such buddies, you know.
The critical buzz has been building from this film ever since it was first playing at the festivals. I mean, do you have any sort of awards hopes for it, or do you not want to even go there?
You know, it's better to not go there.
Yeah.
It's hard not to, because at the moment we're on this big publicity circuit, you know, as the film is released in the States and it's going to be released here. And obviously it's being released at this time of year, and everybody knows that means the distributor has got a hope for it, and it's talked about in that way. So it's hard to stay completely outside of that. I think as being inside that place, you know, being in that world for the first time for me, I kind of recognize how many factors and how kind of crazy the whole process is, and so I realize that there's no guarantee of anything. I mean, and it's so things change all the time, and I try not to become too emotionally invested in that. I think it will be the one thing I think pleases me is that it's being talked about for awards because of the reactions of people who've seen it.
Yeah.
It's not a film which comes with its awards credentials pinned to its brow.
After the success of this, I mean, you must be thrilled at how this film has worked out. Are you attempted to adapt any of your other ones?
Yes, that may well happen. Yes.
Yeah.
And again, it's not that I think only I can do the adaptation. It's more like I find the task a really interesting one, and I would like to adapt other people's books too. I would like to write original screenplays. Basically, film is this new world that has opened up to me, and I'm very excited about all its possibilities. I think it's in many ways a more difficult way to work because you're not making all the decisions yourself, but it's fantastically collaborative and exciting.
Fantastic. Well, it's a wonderful book and a wonderful film. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Cheers.
Plant is real, but not trees. Mountains are too big to be real. Good morning, lamb. Good morning, egg snake. TV persons are flat and made of colors. But me and you are real. Ma, why do the aliens never scream back?
I guess they still can't hear us.
But old Nick, I don't know if he's real. Maybe half.
Jack, listen to me. Do you remember how Alice wasn't always in Wonderland? Well, I wasn't always in room. I've been locked in here for 7 years. There's a world on the other side of this wall.
What other side?
You're gonna help me trick old Nick. This is our chance. You're gonna play dead, and old Nick's gonna come and take you outside. And I'm gonna be there in your head talking to you the whole time.
I'm scared.
I know.
One day, you took me out
Are we in another planet?
to see.
That's us.
Couldn't it be?
You're gonna love it.
What?
The world.
Scream.
What you see on TV, those are pictures of real things. Real trees, real people.
No way!
Jack, the world is so big. It's so big you wouldn't even believe it.
When I was 4, I only knew small things. When I'm 5, I know everything.